Alright, so this is going to be part 5 to What If Tanjiro Was in Black Clover. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
Bow in the presence of greatness, 'cause right now that has forsaken us. You should be honored by my lateness, that I would even show up to this fake shit. So go ahead, go nuts, go.
Hey guys, so this part was recorded after everything else was edited. I'd just like to say that during the latter part of this video, I got sick and I actually got COVID. So you'll see a quite spike difference in my voice in the latter part of the video. So just keep that in mind, and I'm sorry that it is like that. It's just that I wanted to get this video out there as fast as possible, because if you haven't noticed, I haven't uploaded all too often recently. And don't be worried, I'm fine and everything. My throat was just killing me for a few days, so everything's alright. So with that being said, just enjoy the rest of the video. So in the last part, we had just gotten to the climax of the attack on the capital. Now we're at the part where Yuno had taken out Catherine with the help of Tanjiro. With Yuno being beaten up pretty badly, Tanjiro would take Yuno to the capital to let him rest there. This is where he would go out into the city trying to find anyone that would be hurt. Eventually he would find the other magic knights, and this is where he finds out that Asta was taken by the Midnight Sun. With the other magic knights not really having time for Asta, this is where Tanjiro would set off to try to find Asta. Because he has no real way of tracking other than smell, it will take him a bit of time to actually do so. When he does actually find Asta and the area and where they're taking him to, he contemplates whether or not to kill the people that took Asta hostage, as it would be the easiest way to get Asta out of there. Tanjiro convinces himself that this is the right move to do and sets out on trying to kill the kidnappers. But as he's trying to do so, this is where the Wizard King comes in and then kills 2 of the members of the Midnight Sun instantly while trying to capture the rest. This releases Asta from the slime prison that he was in, and he falls onto the ground. Not wanting to look weak, especially in front of the Wizard King, he gets up by himself. Before the three can really chat, this is where Partry comes in to save his members. In a blinding light, he actually does so successfully, although wounded by the Wizard King on his arm. Later on, as they get back to the capital, emotions will be high as they find out that Frigolion is in a coma due to the loss of his arm. This in turn forces Mereoleona to take the reign as captain for the Crimson Lions. After this, we could skip a few days and get back to the Black Bull's hideout. Now, Asta would be in some grief like he was in canon, and he would want Tanjiro to basically train him as he was doing with Noelle. So which style would Tanjiro teach him? Since Asta would have multiple swords, he would want Asta to learn the Breath of the Beast. But there is one problem with that. Because Tanjiro never really learned the Breath of the Beast because he only had one functional arm, he doesn't really know how to perform it. Yeah, he's seen it in the past, but it's not like he could teach Asta directly because again, he only has one functional arm. So instead, he will teach Asta the Breath of the Wind. Now, the reason why he's doing this is for a few reasons. One, the Wind Pillar was alive at the end of the manga, so he has someone to learn it from. Not only that, but it's also a style that the Breath of the Beast derives from. Similar to how every style derives from the Breath of the Sun, it's just lower down the kind of family tree of styles, if you will. In other words, it's a more modified version of Breath of the Wind, just like the Breath of the Mist. Now, I would say that Asta would have a faster time learning this than both Noelle and Tanjiro in original canon because he already has basic sword skills. So the only thing he would really have to master would be the breath control, as Asta doesn't really have any reason to do that in the past. In this short training session between the two, Tanjiro also has to tell Asta that this isn't magic, that this is pure skill. Now, Asta already knows this. It's just that Tanjiro wants to reaffirm it with him so that Asta doesn't get discouraged, because it's going to take a long time for Asta to, well, master something like this. So a few days later, this is when Finro would ask around, seeing if anyone would want to go to his mixer. He would ask Tanjo, as his vice captain status would draw in the ladies, but him being already with someone else would decline the offer. Then Finro would try to invite Asta, as he sees Asta as one of the more normal people in the Black Bulls. Now Asta at first would try to refuse, as he wants to train more with Tanjiro, but Tanjiro would say that Asta deserves a break and this could be something that helps relax him. Now that being said, nothing would really change too much from this entire arc going forward. And what I mean by that is the Midnight Suns kind of attack and where they kidnap the children and everything, as well with the fight against Licht and the other Third Eye members. Nothing really changed because Tanjiro isn't involved in that, and thus the timeline would kind of be the same. So we're gonna skip that, despite that being, a really hype moment in the series. So I don't want to repeat myself and just, put out boring content. And if some of you guys are wondering why is Tanjiro not helping out despite Seke going to the Black Bull's hideout and everything, well, the reason for that is because Tanjiro isn't at the Black Bull's hideout this time. The reason for that is he's just doing his own thing. Because he is a vice captain, he has to go out on his own missions. So even more time would pass at this point. So this would be after they find out who is the traitor amongst the captains, that being the Purple Orca's captain, as well as finding some information from the captured prisoners from the Midnight Sun. So this is where we get into the Water Temple arc. Now the Wizard King obviously wanting to keep this entire plan under wraps. He would want the Black Bulls to go out and do it since he trusts Yami the most out of all the other captains. So within this time, Asta and Noelle would have their training with Tanjo, as well as Magna starting up his training with him. So obviously with Tanjo, knowing most of the breath styles, he would teach Magna the breath of flames. Obviously he would have to get adjusted to having, more breathing capacity and everything like that. But in terms of physical strength, he should be a little bit behind Asta. So it wouldn't be too difficult for him to adjust. So at this point, Asta would have learned the first form of the Breath of the Wind, that being Dust Whirlwind Cutter. Essentially, the user dashes forward at a blinding speed, slashes continuously in a horizontal cyclone pattern. Now with Noelle and her progress, because she's been doing this for months compared to Asta and Magna, she would learn a lot more than those two. In fact, she would learn 3 of the forms from the Breath of the Water. That being said, she isn't the best at them. In fact, she isn't making as much progress as Asta or Magna really, because, well, she's not a swordsman, as well as her not being that physically strong. And remember, it took Tanjiro like 2 years to master Breath of the Water, so you could see why she's struggling. And in fact, it's not really the purpose of this training. The training is more focused on trying to control her magic rather than to master this technique. It's just that this technique helps with mastering your body as well as your magic. And you could see the result of that happening in this arc. Again, like in canon, Yami would have to rely on Noelle to basically learn a spell that would help them travel to the Sea Temple. And just like in canon, she would have a week. And again, she would struggle for a bit, but she has people to support her. People like Tanjiro as well as Kano, which would make her debut in this arc. And as you remember, she is the girl with song magic. With Noelle having more confidence within herself and having more people to just generally talk to about this kind of stuff, she would essentially have a better time at controlling her magic, and therefore would be able to hold and maintain the spell that she had trouble with in canon. Now, I wouldn't say it would be too much of a difference here, as she did still have, issues with controlling her magic, even up to this point. I would say instead of the week that it takes her, it would take her maybe 5 days instead of the 7 in canon. So in the morning, this is where they would go to the Sea Temple. Now this process would be rather smooth, just like it was in canon, with Asta destroying the barrier so that they could go in and essentially getting there with relative ease. Once actually there, they would meet up with the people that's there, and eventually they would meet up with the elder of the sea people. Here, he would explain the rules. He would say that he indeed does have the magic stone, but if they want it, they would have to compete in a little game of his. He would look at each of the members, and he would look at Tanjo for a second, seeing that he has a different robe compared to everyone else, because if you don't know, vice captains have a slightly different robe compared to the others in the squad. As he looks at Tanjo, his appearance throws him for a loop. He doesn't really know what to think. On one hand, he looks very weak. He has an eye that no longer works, as well as an arm that no longer works. But something about his eyes show that he has seen a lot in his short life. Because remember, Tanjo is still pretty young at this point. The elder, not wanting to take any chances, would have Tanjo sit out of the fight just like Yami. Now, that being said, the fight that does end up happening between the different members would pretty much be the same. Only with Asta having a better chance against Kaito. Because if you remember in canon, he had a difficult time actually going against him since he had a unconventional style to him. So in this fight, Asta would use some of the teachings that he's gotten from Tanjiro and incorporate it into his own fighting style. Because he dual wields, he can't apply everything, but a lot of it he can, since it is more of the basics that he hasn't really learned all too much from Franzel, because it is a different style of fighting. That being said, it's not like Asta will overpower Kaito, it's just that they're more on an even footing, if you will, because it was clear in the manga and anime that Kaito had an upper hand, but in this, it's a lot more closer. The fight then comes to a close as the elder tells everyone that the Midnight Sun has invaded. This is Veto and his group. So, like in canon, it would start off with Luck and Magna going against Veto, them losing, and then Veto going on and fighting Noel and Kahano. And if you guys are wondering how the fight between those two would be, that being Kahano and Noel, because Noel has been training with Tanjo, like I said before, she does know the basics of swordsmanship, and so the battle would be more fierce. Not only that, but she also knows a few forms on top of that. So the fight would be a lot more even instead of how it was more one-sided in canon. So seeing this, Tanjiro would be proud of his students for coming this far, but that quickly gets sidetracked by the Midnight Sun, like I said before. With this, Yami and Tanjiro decide that it's time for them to step in, because at this point things are getting serious, and with a third eye member being there, they're not really going to have a chance without them. Well, that's what they think. So they try to escape, but again, like in canon, it's being controlled by a spatial magic user. Therefore, they can't escape from where they're at. They would try to use their spells, but it wouldn't work because of the spatial magic being used. Going back to Kahano and Noel, their fight would be interrupted by the Midnight Sun, that being Veto. They would see that both Luck, Magna, and even Kahano's father could not beat Veto. This would enrage the two as their comrades and family had been attacked by this beast. This motivates them to attack Veto directly despite his intimidating appearance. And with this, because Noel is a more frontline attacker, Kahano is there to support her using her magic. This would reinforce Noel's body, making her faster and her strikes harder or more powerful. Now she would start off with a surface slash, then quickly change to a flowing dance, which is the third form of the breath of the water. Now there'd be little cuts here and there, but Veto would block a lot of it because of his own reinforcing magic and his own strength. And these scratches are in no way bleeding or even fatal, to say the least. In fact, after this display that she shows off, Veto just takes her sword and breaks it. As he does so, he then says something to Noel. "You really thought that would stop me? Pathetic. I'm gonna show you the real meaning of despair by starting off by killing everyone you love. And you just sit there as you watch helplessly not being able to lift a finger. As Veto pulls back his fist to punch Noel, this is where they hear something in the back. It's Asta and Kaito. In a split moment, both Kaito and Asta would knock back Veto a bit. This would save Noel in the process. Now the fight here would not really be too different from canon, just that Asta would unleash the first form of the Breath of the Wind, that being Dust Whirlwind Cutter. Now, like I said before, it is a horizontal kind of cyclone as the person like dashes forward. So it would be a slightly modified version that would include both his swords, because he would use both in this case. Now, because he's not a master at this style and he's adding 2 swords to it, it would be kind of sloppy, but because he has a lot of physical strength, it would actually do a little bit of damage. With this being done, it would give the group a bit of confidence, thinking that they have a chance against Veto. This is what gets Veto really annoyed, that the fact that they have hope at all. In doing so, it seals their fate. Veto then quickly injures both Kano and Kaito in ways they never thought he would. First, with Kaito, he immediately dismembers his leg, making it where he can no longer dance. And with Kano, he injures her vocal cords so that she can no longer sing. Asta would try to get in the middle of this, but he just isn't physically strong enough to go against Veto at this point. Veto would just smack him and then he would just get launched to the wall, hitting against the rocks. And this would happen over the period of the fight, where Asta would try to attack him and he would just get more injured than land hits, if that makes sense. So at this point, Asta is also pretty badly injured. This gives Noel the motivation to create a new spell, this being Sea Dragon's Roar. Now at first, she has not as much confidence as she did before because of her sword being well destroyed, but she still has that catalyst to use, or be able to use, that being, well, her sword. It still acts kind of like a wand despite it being broken. She would remember the training that she did with Tanjiro and she would calm her breathing. She would then unleash Sea Dragon's Roar. This would be an incredibly powerful spell, and this would end up with it essentially eating the arm of Veto. And with this, Veto unlocks his third eye. Using his mystical beast magic now unlocked, since his third eye is now unlocked, he would gain a new arm through that. This would also come with a major power boost. And with this being done, it looks hopeless for our group. Alright, so I'm gonna end it here. I know it's kind of short, but I'm sick, as you guys can tell, and I want to get this out as soon as possible because I haven't uploaded in a very long time. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm gonna try to do more as I get better. We don't have a Patreon anymore. I shut it down as I felt like I could no longer keep up with the rewards for that. So instead of, stealing or scamming people out of their money, I didn't feel justified to, keep it up anymore. So for those wondering what I did, there you go. Anyways, with that being said, this is going to be the end of the video. Like I said before, hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe if you liked the video. And if you made it to the end of the video, please comment down CS so I know you support the channel. So with that being said, bye.